Hello! Today we will create an application in the Studio. Search for studio.iondv.com. You see the start page of the Studio with info about metadata which is available by default. Close the pop-up window and click the Create the Application button. In the form, enter the system name and the description of the application. Set the application version. After saving the form, a side menu consisting of the main application tools becomes available. Create a data model class. Go to the Classes menu item and select Create Class. The form for filling in the properties of the new class will open. It is necessary to specify the system and logical name as well as fill in the remaining properties of the attributes, if necessary. Create the class Tickets. Save the form. When creating a class, the ID is automatically created. It's the key attribute which is unique for the class. The created class Tickets is displayed in the form of an entity table in the Studio workspace. Create class attribute. Select the Create Attribute button to add an attribute to the Tickets class. The form to create an attribute will open. Fill in the system and logical name of the attribute. Set the attribute type, specify the uniqueness, indexing for searching and ban on empty value, since the attribute ticket number will be the key attribute for this class. Save the form. The remaining necessary class attributes are created in the same way. As a result, we have the following attributive structure for the Tickets class. Edit class properties. When you have the attributive structure, you can fill in the additional properties for the class. For example, you can label the user who created the object, a unique composite index of the class objects, and the value of the class semantics. To do this, open the class form for editing. There are several ways to perform this action. By double-clicking on the class table in the workspace. By double-clicking on the class name located in the Classes item on the sidebar. If there is a selected class in the workspace or in the sidebar, the editing action is available. When you open the editing form, the action of opening the class in the editor is available at the bottom of the form. When you select an action, a window opens where the class is displayed as a file in the JSON format. This action is available on all forms of created objects during editing. Inheritance. Studio allows you to create the inheritance between the objects. First, create the base class Person and fill it with the necessary attribute structure. Next, we create the recipient class. It will inherit the attribute composition of the person class, and we add other attributes for it. Open for editing the form of the recipient class, and for the ancestor property, select the value from the list, the person class. Thus, when creating view forms for the recipient class, you can use attributes of the base class. Connections between entities. The functionality of the IONDV. Studio allows you to create connections between created objects by specifying the appropriate type for the class attribute. Let's take a look at the example of the Tickets attribute of the recipient class. Open the attribute editing form and select the collection value from the list for the type property. It is also necessary to specify the item class property to which the collection is reference. Save the form. Thus, on the form of recipient class, a collection of tickets objects will be displayed. Building a data model schema. Create the Documents class and set the attribute composition for it in the same way. After that, it is necessary to determine the types of attributes and set the references to the corresponding classes for them. In the recipient class, open the Passport attribute for editing, select the type Collection, and in the Item class field, select the Documents class from the list. Save the form. In the Tickets class, open the Recipient attribute for editing, select the type Reference, and in the Reference class field, select the Recipient class from the list. Save the form. In the Documents class, open the Recipient attribute for editing, select the type Reference, and in the Reference class field, select the Recipient class from the list. Save the form. As a result, we have the model schema for Social Nutrition Tickets app. Formula to calculate the number of recipients receiving aid. Now we need to set a formula to calculate automatically the number of preferential categories for one recipient. To select a preferential category on the form, we use the attributes with the Boolean type. To indicate the preferential category of the recipient, it is necessary to tick the checkbox for corresponding attributes. After saving the form for the number of selected categories attribute, the value of an equal number of preferential categories will be calculated. Calculation formula. Convert value of the logical attribute to a number, where 1 is true, false is 0, and we sum up the values. Thus, we get the number of selected categories of the recipient. Formula to calculate the maximum ticket value. For the form of the ticket, we set the formula to calculate automatically the maximum ticket value, which depends on the number of preferential categories for the user. In the Tickets class, open the form for editing the maximum allowable amount of use attribute and set the value for the formula property of the following form. It means that we multiply the value of the number of categories of the recipient by the maximum ticket value calculated for one preferential category. Formula to calculate the ticket expiration date. Set the automatic calculation of the ticket expiration date based on the calculation that the maximum period for using the ticket is 28 days. For the attribute date of completion of the tickets class in the formula property, set the following value. Create navigation section. Navigation for the application is formed in the navigation subsection. The main element of the navigation for the app is a section that groups menu items. To create a navigation section, go to the Navigation section and select the Create Section action, available on the Work panel. The Create form opens, and you need to fill in the system and logical name of the section. The display mode is set in this case by default. It makes sense to select the name of the navigation section in accordance with the principle of grouping the menu items included in this section. In this case, we group by topic of the application, since all existing menu items will be grouped into one section. Save the form. Create navigation item. Click the Create Item button on the Work panel to create the navigation item. When you select this action, a form for creating a menu item opens where you need to fill in the system and logical names and select the type of navigation. In this case, each navigation is a class page that was created earlier. Let's create a menu item for the Documents class to display its objects. The result in the system is as follows. Overriding the view form of a list of objects. Further, for each navigation item, you can specify an individual list view form that can be different from the list view form of objects of this class in other places of the system. To do this, simply add the attributes from the list below to the marked area. In the same way, we create menu items to display the objects of the previously created classes. The result is as follows. Create view. Next, move on to creating view forms for class objects. Such forms allow you to specify an arbitrary attributive composition for a view of class attributes in the system. Select the Classes section and then the View action on the Work panel. Select the type of view. The form for creating an object displays the attributive composition which is necessary to fill in the data about the class object when it is created. The view form for editing an object displays the attributive composition needed to view and edit the data of a system object. The list view form displays the attributive structure to view brief information about the system object when choosing a navigation item or adding a class object as reference or collection. Create each form one by one with the necessary attribute composition by dragging and dropping attribute blocks into the corresponding area, or to speed up the process, the Transfer Attributes action is available on the Work panel. Thus, all the attributes of the class display on the form. Those that should not be displayed on it can simply be removed. For example, ID. Attributes on the form will be displayed in the same order that they are formed in the area of View forms. Therefore, you can reorder the location of the attribute on the form by dragging and dropping the attributes. Add the attribute properties to the view form. Also, on the view form for an attribute, you can set properties, in addition to those that were set on the class form. For example, set the mask for the number phone attribute. Or, for the list view form of objects of the Tickets class, set styles for objects in the list. Move to the view of the Tickets class, select the List view, select the Edit Form action. Open the form in the editor and add the pre-configured setting. Create workflow for issuing coupons. The ticket is created in the issued status, then the cashier changes the status to acknowledged after the recipient cashed the ticket. If the recipient did not manage to cash the ticket within a month, then the coupon status automatically changes to expired. To create a workflow for objects of the Tickets class, go to the Workflows section and select the Create Workflow action. A form to create a workflow opens where you need to enter the logical and system name of the created process and select a class from the list. In our case, it's the Tickets class. Create State of Workflow. On the Work panel of the Workflows section, select the Create State action. A form to create state opens. Fill in the system and logical name, and if necessary, the conditions of the workflow state of the system object. In this case, 3 states are available for objects of the Tickets class. Create transitions between states of workflow. After that, it is necessary to create transitions between the states of the workflow of system objects. Select the action plus transition, and a form for creating a transition opens. It is necessary to fill in the following: system and logical name of the transition, state in which the object is located to make the transition, the state that the object will acquire after the transition, values assigned to the attributes of the object after the transition. When transitioning from the issued by state to acknowledged, the status, the current date for the ticket acknowledgement date, and the current user as the user who acknowledged the ticket must be changed. When transitioning from the issued by state to acknowledged status, it is necessary to affix the appropriate ticket status. That's how we create the workflow to issue the ticket.